Welcome back to our explainer series on perverting our reproductive nature. Today we're diving straight into Chapter 16, the economics of sex. And wow, this one is a fascinating ride. We're exploring how our deepest, most primal biological instincts have literally been engineered into the ultimate business model. The core argument here? Modern corporations aren't just selling us products anymore. They are actually selling our own desires right back to us.
Okay, let's just quickly run through our roadmap for this chapter. We're going to cover 6 main areas, starting with the sheer scale of this billion-dollar instinct, exploring how the digital economy harvests human attention, and eventually heading all the way down the rabbit hole to the rise of synthetic intimacy, before wrapping up with how the author suggests we can reclaim our reality.
So let's jump right into Section 1, the billion-dollar instinct.
This chapter sets a really cold, investigative tone right from the jump with a powerful premise. It states, if you can turn desire into currency, you can own the world, right? We are not looking at human sexuality through a romantic or a moral lens today. We are looking at it strictly through the lens of cold, hard economics. Sexual imagery doesn't just sell, it literally shapes modern civilization and economic expansion in ways that entirely bypass our rational brains.
To give you an idea of the sheer scale we're talking about, a 2019 report estimated the global pornography industry alone to be worth over $97 billion. That is bigger than the combined revenues of Netflix, Microsoft, and Amazon Prime Video. It's staggering. And we're not just talking about explicit material here. It's lingerie ads, it's TikTok trends, it's those perfectly curated social media feeds that monetize sex without even selling it directly.
So how exactly do they do it? Well, it boils down to a pretty ruthless 3-step corporate formula. Step 1, hijack the biological instinct. Step 2, offer a visual or digital substitute. And Step 3, monetize that resulting craving. It's basically a perpetual motion machine that runs entirely on human arousal and click-through rates rather than actual genuine satisfaction.
Now, if you recall from our earlier chapters, we talked about how birth control severed sex from consequence, right? And then how early pornography severed sex from relationship. Well, here we're seeing the absolute culmination of that entire trajectory. We are now severing intimacy entirely just so the free market can step in and monetize the fractured pieces.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 2, harvesting human attention.
In today's digital economy, you really need to understand that you are not just the user. You are the actual asset being auctioned off. Dr. Tim Wu, who wrote The Attention Merchants, hits the nail on the head here. He says we're at a point where the most valuable resource on the internet is not oil, not gold, but the human gaze. And that gaze is hijacked most effectively through sexual stimuli, simply because it triggers an instant, pre-rational biological arousal. It holds our visual attention longer than almost anything else.
I mean, just look at the numbers. A 2023 Harvard Business Review article estimated that sexually suggestive content on social media can increase engagement by 30 to 70%. Tech companies are literally running A/B tests on everything, from the angle of a photo to the degree of eye contact, meticulously engineering this content to maximize the exact number of seconds you spend looking at a screen. It is all about shaping your behavior toward purchases and subscriptions.
All right, Section 3, commodifying our identities.
What's really fascinating here is how something that was historically viewed as this profound, sacred pathway to intimacy has been transformed into a highly optimized product line. Dating apps have fundamentally turned human beings into digital commodities. Look at this 2020 Pew Research data. 71% of dating app users say they feel judged solely on their appearance, and 45% feel totally overwhelmed by the whole process. Platforms like Tinder and Bumble foster consumerism over connection. Objectively speaking, the interface is designed so that you aren't actually meeting someone, you're shopping.
And the author's economic critique goes even deeper here, looking at how modern identity itself is treated. Things like the compulsion of self-exposure, corporate activism like Pride Month packaging, the proliferation of gender identities. Economically speaking, these function as brilliant market segmentation. From this perspective, the deeply personal journey of discovering who you are gets transformed by the market into swappable, sellable products. It creates these highly optimized micro-influencer segments designed entirely for engagement.
And that leads us right into Section 4, the profit of addiction.
This is where the business model takes a seriously dark turn. You see, tech and dating conglomerates do not actually want you to be satisfied. Why? Because fulfillment kills their revenue stream. To see the proof of this, just look at the medical reality of PIED, or porn-induced erectile dysfunction.
This is a very real medical phenomenon in young men under 40 linked directly to the compulsive consumption of pornography. The digital product literally destroys the physical intimacy and pleasure it promises, but the cycle of use just continues, trapping users in this relentless habit loop. It's because these platforms don't monetize satisfaction. Satisfaction has a definitive endpoint. Instead, they monetize compulsion, which is a never-ending loop. It's like a giant casino. Platforms like Tinder operate exactly like slot machines. They intentionally delay the real reward to trigger those little dopamine hits and habitual cravings. At the end of the day, the house always wins. Former Google ethicist Tristan Harris gave a really stark warning about this. He said, "The best minds of our generation are figuring out how to keep you addicted to a screen." I mean, just think about the language we use. We are called users. That's the exact same terminology applied to narcotics. Essentially, these platforms view us as users of a highly engineered emotional opiate.
Moving on to Section 5, Selling the Simulation.
We are currently living through a quiet revolution where simulated intimacy is actively replacing real human connection. The sociologist John Baudrillard coined the term hyperreality for this. It's a condition where the real and the fictional are so seamlessly blended together that you can't even tell the difference, and eventually, the simulation is actually preferred over reality. And it makes sense, right? Why would you risk the painful rejection and the incredibly hard work of a real relationship when a digital simulation offers you flattering, consequence-free validation right on demand?
And the tools of this so-called synthetic sociality, a term highlighted in a 2023 Nature paper, are everywhere now. You've got emotional roleplay on OnlyFans, ChatGPT AI girlfriends, VR pornography, teledildonics, which are these internet-connected devices. They all perfectly mimic human warmth and trigger those same neurochemical responses, but they completely bypass the risk, the vulnerability, and the actual depth of real life.
So the crucial point here is the contrast between the two. Real relationships are messy. They're reciprocal. They require you to actually grow as a person. Simulated intimacy, it just flatters you. It adapts to whatever you want, and it asks absolutely nothing of you in return. But by outsourcing our deepest desires to these simulations, we ironically end up becoming less human.
Finally, Section 6, Reclaiming Reality. Because this economic perversion doesn't just make a few tech giants incredibly rich, it makes all of us highly manipulable subjects. And it leaves us with a really provocative question to think about. In the end, if a culture simply trades intimacy for impulse and connection for clicks, will it eventually forget what it actually means to love and be loved? Ultimately, the economy of sex is a massive warning about who has the power to shape our reality. So to bring this all together, this chapter brilliantly advances the book's overall thesis. It shows exactly how the perversion of our reproductive nature turns what should be sacred into something entirely synthetic, reducing us to manipulable consumers. We have to reclaim our reality. Keep these core economic insights in mind as we move forward into the later chapters of the book, which really start focusing on cultural recovery and how we actually fight back. If you found this explainer as eye-opening as I did, I highly encourage you to dig deeper into the source material. You can support the author and explore an amazing interactive companion site by visiting pervertingourreproductivenature.com. Thank you for learning with me today.